Generic greetings and welcome to Science Insanity, a channel dedicated to bringing my love of science fiction and all its often contradictory glory to you, the viewer. Today, I wanted to talk about something that seemed to be a sticking point for a lot of people in an older opinion piece I did on the different types of mechs, and that would be where power armor falls along my scale from walking tanks to rule of cool robots from that video. They don't. They're called power armor. Clearly different. Okay, video over. Thanks for coming, guys. Check out my Patreon. Give me all the money. Goodbye. But in all seriousness, this video will be covering the different types of power armor in science fiction, how they're used, what they look like, and why they're all awesome, but very clearly not mechs, except for maybe one. But first, if you'd like to support Science Insanity, check out our Patreon. If space bucks are short, like, sub, ring the bell, share, all of that, since every little bit helps and is appreciated. And lastly, we have a Discord now. Link below in the description. Participation is not optional. Also, last one for real this time. Sci will be live on Twitch on the 19th. Me and Steve are playing a co-op sci-fi puzzle-solving game. Woo! More live stream stuff. With the shameless self-shill out of the way, power armor. Similar to mechs, power armor is a massive gradient ranging from single pistons and pipes bolted to someone's arms all the way up to things you could charitably describe as baby mechs. So in keeping with the mech types video and my obsession with examples by 3, I'm going to divide power armor up into 3 subcategories, those being exoskeletons, power armor proper, and mini-mechs. The first one being part of that lovely gray area where you can hem and haw back and forth about whether it actually is power armor or not. A great example of this archetype would be the rig from Deck 13's IP, the Surge, or exoskeleton from the movie Elysium. This category of power armor trends towards spindly, thin, and exposed, with large visible pistons and motors running the joints of the exoskeleton. They are also, by far, the most disgusting kind of power armor because they don't rely on a control stick like mini-mechs or a brain interface like a lot of power armor proper do. Oh no. They plug into your goddamn bones directly. I know VR games always complain about the controls, but I don't think this is the kind of analog that most of them would be asking for. The average exoskeleton works by mirroring the movements of the pilot. If Action Man punches, so does the robot arm. Only difference is that the robot arm can crumple the front of a truck while Action Man can barely manage to knock someone out. If Action Man jumps, so do the robo legs, sending them 3 stories up into the air. The exoskeleton drastically enhances what the wearer can do by essentially copying what their muscles are doing and then doing it better because mechanical supremacy. In order for this to not accidentally get out of sync with the wearer or go wrong and like rip their arms off or something, the exoskeleton needs to, in most cases, be manually plugged in to whatever consensual ports are available. There are examples where stuff like this just clips or ties on, but that's genuinely more rare than this disgusting, gross kind, and I don't know why, but that's just how the rules be. For the most part, the reason this is done is that a lot of exos need to not only be integrated into the subject's brainstem and nervous system, but also their bones and man-meats. The bones is so that they can function like anchor points, and the meat of the person so that sensors can pick up and mirror the electrical signals sent through it. The exo essentially lets the wearer do all the human things they normally can, but now with super strength and a level of super endurance that protects them from being punched back or dropped off a cliff, but in most cases, won't protect them from the things that will actually kill you, like bullets or explosions or energy weapons. They have plot armor for that, hiding behind the door of some shitty sci-fi car. Exoskeletons are also used to carry really, really overpowered infantry weapons like the regular railgun hybrid rifle or the honestly ever-present missile and machine gun arms. Because the only thing stopping Private Dipshitsky from hefting around his entire battalion tactical group's armory is the fact that he cannot physically do it. For now. These types of exoskeletons are mostly used when someone needs to justify the main character having some ridiculously oversized, overpowered, or a mix of the two weapon, but it would look genuinely silly for an unaugmented person to be walking around with a refrigerator-sized missile launcher and not have some kind of justification for them being able to carry it. Now, a lot of people would probably say, yep, this is power armor, and just wipe their hands and be done with it, but the reason I don't want to actually call this power armor is because, well, it's not. 9 times out of 10, exoskeleton-style power armor, henceforth known as PA since, my voice and the word count, like, they tend to have no or very little actual protection on it, I think this is a side effect of Hollywood though, since most of the time exoskeleton style PA exists, there's some famous A-lister that really wants their face to be visible, so regular and sensible "I hope I don't die" measures like a helmet are off the table. A perfect example of this are the combat jackets from the movie Edge of Tomorrow, or again, the rig from Deck 13's The Surge. For the combat jacket, it's an exoskeletal suit that you can step into and can support its own weight just fine. It enhances the wearer's strength and stamina, allowing them to trundle along for hours while carrying a metric Texas worth of firepower. However, it doesn't grant them any kind of super speed or crazy acrobatics. It's meant to haul the instruments of an artilleryman's orchestra, and that's what it does. Though, for the love of God, why can't exosuits, especially this thing, be made with actual armor? Nerd rant incoming, but for fuck's sake, Hollywood, what is even the point of these things? It's literally a bunch of spaghetti muscles with exposed wiring and a gun expected to fight an alien tentacle monster made of blenders and chainsaws. Why did you give the dude inside it football pads for armor? There's literally another guy freebagging it as butt naked as the day he was born, and I'm pretty sure he's the smart one here. Not like there's any protection anyways, so might as well get some air cooling while you're awaiting death. And the exosuit from Elysium. Someone just drop a missile on the main character and be done with it. Most exos suck. They're just lazy excuses for creatives to add pointless sci-fi icons like power armor or robot arms and stuff with no thought to how they work, what they do, or the structure behind them. It's just Matt Damon with a bunch of tubes stuck to his face, and nothing will ever change that image for me. Or we get the Halo television show where it's red light, green light with the chief taking his helmet off every 3 seconds. That show was shit, don't watch it. And speaking of Halo, power armor proper, the one part of this video where I can say with absolute certainty, yup, that is power and armor. This is where we find people like Doom Guy, Halo Man, Martian Gal, Metroid Woman, Fallout Boy, and even good old Gordon Freeman himself. The armored part to the last category's power now comes in full force. Power armor proper often have their wearers clad head to toe in full protective bliss. Whether it be their joints, their face, their body in general doesn't matter, as this category of PA tends to be absolutely covered in I don't give a fuck brand protection. They can soak the never-ending swarm of light arms fire, shrug off larger, more powerful weapons, and even provide some protection against heavy weapons and some dedicated anti-vehicle armaments. This is where we start seeing the designs really slot into the common idea of what power armor actually is. Most of the time, unlike exoskeletons, PAPs don't actually need to dig into your brain or muscles and bones to work. They fit over the wearer like a second skin, a far less invasive read the muscle twitches and electrical signals in the user's body to mirror their actions, rather than, straight up plugging into the nerves. Most of the time, the proper form of power armor also needs a medium for this to work, whether it be the undersuit of Mjolnir armor or the bodysuits of Martian Titan armor pilots. PAPs need some form of technological undersuit to both integrate with the armor and facilitate the connection with the user. In some cases, like in 40k, the Astartes, or Space Marines for people who are uninitiated, have something called the Black Carapace, essentially a bioreactive sheet of circuits that's implanted under the skin and lets them operate their power armor fully, as well as some vehicles and weapons. This type of power armor also tends to be where you see hilarious amounts of protection added on, as the point of power armor is to be less infantry and more light mechanized units. But back to the Expanse, I think it's pretty much the perfect example here. The Martian Titan armor is made up of a self-sealing undersuit in case of punctures, and layered on top of that are dozens of overlapping ballistic plates that make the Titan armor basically invincible to regular infantry weapons. It's designed to be fully protected from pretty much every angle, and even carries a minigun under one arm and a rocket launcher over the other shoulder. We also have stuff like the power armor from the Fallout series. Some of them are closer to Halo's Mjolnir armor, but the style and appearance from Fallout 4 is, in my opinion, the coolest, so we go with that. These types of power armor, instead of needing to be assembled around the wearer or put on in pieces, simply fold open like a Venus mantrap, allowing someone to step inside. Of course, not all forms of power armor are so elegant or detailed. Sometimes you just need to slap a tank's worth of metal around a man to the point he's now legally classified as a heavy truck for insurance purposes every time he crosses a bridge. Power armor proper is also where we see a mix of handheld and integrated weapons. For the most part, exoskeletons carry their weapons by hand, or maybe have a rack on the back for an extra machine gun or rocket pod or something, But this type of power armor is where you start to see things like Gatling guns, multi-rockets, and energy weapons get integrated into the actual suit rather than just being held. Not always, but you start to see it more. Stuff like the power suit from Metroid literally has a multi-munitions launcher, i.e. a giant cannon, built into its arm in place of, well, an arm. For things like Terminator armor, we also see everything from melee weapons to Gatling guns and more built into the armor itself, alongside lighter weapons like flamers or bolters that are physically held in an open hand. Power armor proper is the everyman system of choice since it's so widely applicable and modifiable to fit any setting, environment, or combat scenario. Simply slim down or embiggen the protection and weapons and hey presto, there you go. And speaking of embiggening things, that brings us to the last category of power armor. Mini-mechs, baby mechs, maybe mechs? These are essentially a mech so small that it looks like power armor, and the line between the two is starting to get a little fuzzy, so once again, we can hem and haw about where certain things actually fall. So of course, Mjolnir armor, power armor, proper, obviously. The Mantis from recent Halo games is very obviously a mech. Glorious Steppy Boy be praised, foot to forehead of the enemy is the greatest strategy known to man. But what about the prototype from the Halo Legends short, the prototype? It looks like regular old Spartan power armor, but it's not. Anyone can use it if they know how to pilot it. It doesn't need any of the advanced interfaces or modifications that a Spartan needs. It also can't really move around with its legs, though sure it can jump and stand and walk, but for the most part it needs to use its rocket booster system to move around. Its weapons are all quite heavy, basically a tank on legs with its missile launcher and cannon and Gatling gun all at the same time, and it seems to operate more like a vehicle than any form of armor. But the dude inside has all of his limbs and the corresponding parts of the armor, so it looks and acts like, well, powered armor. Along to 40k again, and a Dreadnought is very clearly a mech. There's a dead guy in there driving it, and since he has no limbs, I wouldn't exactly call it armor, and no, I will not explain that statement for people who don't get it. And we've already talked about Space Marine armor, and the Terminator version is the same, just comically chunked up. But then we have the Centurion. Is this power armor? Is this a small mech? It's bloody huge, and the dude inside can't even get his arms and legs into the limbs of the Centurion. They need to control surfaces inside for that. What about the power loader from Aliens? I don't think that really qualifies as a mech per se, but it's huge and it's mostly driven by a control panel near the driver. And while I could keep going on, literally forever, I'm sure you've gathered by now that the hallmark of the mini-mech is that it becomes a little bit difficult to tell whether it's a weird baby carrier version of a big steppy mech or simply just a hilariously embiggened type of power armor. Once you get to about twice the size of a person, I think it's safe to say it's not quite power armor anymore, and when you're thrice the size of a person, I would say it's very clearly a bipedal vehicle at that point. Mini-mechs also carry the next level up of weaponry. While exoskeletons and power armor generally limit themselves to infantry weapons with the occasional anti-vehicle or aircraft missile for shits and giggles, Mini-mechs carry everything from large-bore Gatling cannons to big surface-to-surface or surface-to-air missile racks, giant energy weapons, main tank cannons, or, in the case of 40k, a drill, because nothing says scary like a man with 6 DeWalt's duct taped to his hands running at you. Oh, 40k, you so silly. Similar to the scale of weapons they carry, Mini-mechs are also lugging around a frankly silly level of armor. What's that, Mr. Space Marine? You're unhappy with your 10 tons of ceramite plating? Here, have another 10 tons and a complimentary cup holder. Now you're indestructible and hydrated. What more could you want? Honestly, there's not much more I could go over for this category since it's so up in the air. Instead, community engagement time. Throw in your favorite mini-mech designs and debate about them in the comments. Maybe you disagree and the Centurion is just power armor. Maybe you think the Dreadnought is power armor and not a mech because it isn't big enough compared to things like a Knight or a Titan. Maybe you think the armored troopers from Votoms are power armor because they're so small. They're not, they're very clearly mechs. Maybe you consider the power loader to be industrial equipment and therefore not even deserving to be in this video. Who knows? Debate and start nerd wars in the comments. Your overlord commands you for my entertainment. But that is about where I'm going to end the video off since I don't think there's much more I could talk about this. So, before we fully end off, a huge thanks to all of Sci's patrons. Your support is greatly appreciated, and on the 19th when me and Steve are going to be streaming, you guys have paid for that co-op video game. Thank you very much for your support. And for those patrons at the $5 tier, a special thank you to David G, the original, Augie, 11 Bravo Crunchy, Terry Higgins, Pedro Munaz, David G, the other one, Silencer, Vox Apollyon, Phoenix, BT Legend, Electro Boy 11, Logan Maynard, Mickey, David Armand, Creedome, Robin Schnappet, Fenrir Striker, Tachi Tukane. And with that, the video is pretty much over. Once again, we have a Discord, link in the description and pinned comment down below. Thank you very much for watching. Outros are hard. Goodbye.